The family of a murder victim asked for help from psychics. They're on the scene of a high-profile crime, why there may be one question left for them to answer. Can psychics uncover what detectives could not? A local murder victim's family hopes so. Late this afternoon, they took psychic sisters to the murder scene where a prominent doctor was killed.
Yeah, and the hope here is that those psychic sixth sense will answer one basic question. Was more than one person involved in this murder? Channel 4 Action News Westmoreland Bureau Chief Jennifer Mealy was there as the psychics toured this murder scene late this afternoon. Jen, this had to be fascinating.
It really was, Wendy, and I'm coming to you live right now from inside Dr. John Yelenic's home. You know, he saw psychics quite a bit, so his neighbor thought it was appropriate to invite other psychics here to the home where he was murdered. As you can see behind me right now, they are doing a reading, and the information that they have gathered and will gather has been handed over to authorities to help solve this case. Sisters Suzanne Kelly and Jean Mackenzie Vincent were raised in a spiritual church and educated on how to channel spirits. They came from Butler County Thursday hoping to dig up more information about the murder of Dr. John Yelenic. His estranged wife's boyfriend, Trooper Kevin Foley, was charged with his brutal stabbing, but the Attorney General's office says more arrests may come.
I had felt actually who was present before he crossed over, and I did feel a male, I did feel a female, and possibly somebody watching out by the door, like, you know, what are the neighbors doing? Can someone hear what's going on?
We felt that John's spirit was bringing in that there is a couple more people involved in this, and also that there was something to do with a cover-up with law enforcement.
That information was given to the Indiana County District Attorney and Blairsville Police, who then handed the case off to the Attorney General's office to avoid a conflict of interest. Thursday, the psychics returned to the Blairsville home, saying they used his neighbor's aura to gather more information. It was her son who found Yelenic dead in his home in 2006. Melissa Yu says there was an immediate spark during her first reading that led to a description of other possible suspects.
It was only a few minutes into the reading that John came through, and she was able to see that we had somebody close to us, like a neighbor or a family member who had passed, but it brought great grief to our family.
And all of the information that police were able to corroborate was given to them by the psychics and proved by DNA evidence and forensic evidence. In fact, right here, this is where Dr. John Yelenic was found murdered. Actually, they believe his head went through this window. He was stabbed several times and found on this floor. The psychics knew all of that and were able to tell police to look for DNA evidence and also tennis shoes and bloody shoe prints. All of that has come out in court thus far. Reporting live in Blairsville, Indiana County, I'm Jennifer Mealy, Channel 4 Action News.
This time on Psychic Investigators. When a local dentist is found brutally murdered in his home, everyone is shocked.
And I said, well, what's so bad that I can't go in? And they said, you really don't want to see this.
The police suspect his closest friends.
Now all of a sudden, we're under a light for everybody to watch our every move.
Until a pair of psychic sisters share a disturbing vision.
I felt a lot of blood pooling around my feet, and I had a flash of a bat.
And all of a sudden, spirit guides just screamed out, "Law enforcement."
Blairsville, Pennsylvania, an hour's drive from Pittsburgh. A factory town which once turned out the steel and glass that helped build America. This is small town USA, where life is comfortable and safe. At least that's what everyone thought, until a spring day in 2006. On the afternoon of April 13th, a teenaged boy makes a shocking discovery at his next-door neighbor's house.
He was so upset, and I'm like, what is wrong? What is wrong? I thought maybe Zachary got hurt or what have you. He's like, you have to come now, it's John. He's dead.
Melissa Yu's neighbor is Dr. John Yelenic, a local dentist. She immediately calls 911.
When I walked up to the door, I saw there was blood on the outside of the door and the window. And right inside the foyer, there was blood all over the floor, all over the walls, all over the floor.
In the living room, Yelenic discovers a man's body lying in a pool of blood, his throat slashed from ear to ear.
Immediately, I knew that it had to be a homicide. No one could have done that to themselves.
Corporal Janelle Yelenic has been with the Blairsville police for 6 years, but this is her first homicide.
It just looked like there was a violent struggle and there's just blood that went everywhere.
She immediately calls in the Pittsburgh FBI to help collect forensic evidence. Throughout the house, the killer has left a trail of blood.
There were footprints going out through the living room, through the dining room, out the back door.
The footprints may belong to the killer, but he's left no weapon and wiped his fingerprints clean.
The word had already started to get out, and people were coming to find out what was going on.
One of those people is the victim's cousin, Marianne Clark.
And as I got to his house, I asked, I wanted to go in. And they said, you can't go in. And I said, well, what's so bad that I can't go in? And they said, well, he's been murdered. And you really don't want to see this.
Melissa Use, John's next-door neighbor, has been his friend since the 9th grade.
He was an awesome guy. He was an awesome father who loved his son very much. He was a good neighbor, and he also made a difference in our community.
John was probably the kindest, most gentle, generous, fun-loving person you would ever meet. If you met John, you loved John.
John Yelenic had recently moved back to the neighborhood after splitting with his wife of 9 years.
The divorce was a really bitter divorce. Every time they would get close to a settlement, Michelle always wanted something more.
Including custody of their 9-year-old son. But after 5 long years, Michelle and John finally agreed to a settlement.
John finally saw an end to this dark tunnel that he was going through.
But John never got a chance to sign the papers.
I don't think anyone in Blairsville had any idea that this could be anything other than random. There was no reason for John Yelenic to be murdered.
Jennifer Mealy follows the sensational story for the local television news.
That's when you saw the neighbors start to lock their doors at night, something they'd never done before, keeping their porch lights on and watching things a little more closely.
Living right beside John's house, my kids were terrified. We didn't sleep for, I bet, over a week. We were just so scared to be in our home.
In the days following the chilling crime, the police canvassed the area. A neighbor reports hearing 2 men fighting about money in the pre-dawn hours. This casts a new light on evidence found at the scene. Evidence pointing directly at the victim's next-door neighbors, the Uses, the family who first raised the alarm.
We were on the coffee table. We found a check that was made out from the Uses to Mr. Yelenic. They didn't want him to cash it yet. So Mr. Hughes was a suspect. He was, I guess, a person of interest is how we call it.
Police take the victim's neighbors in for questioning and grill them about the uncashed check.
I was going to open a bakery here in Blairsville, and John had given me $15,000 to help open my bakery.
But Melissa says he asked for the money back suddenly, saying he needed it to make a tax payment.
And I wrote him a check. I said, I only have $14,000 at this time, and then I'll get you the other $1,000 within the next couple weeks.
The police aren't convinced by the story.
Not only were we losing a dear friend of ours, but now we were actually being considered as somebody that could have done this horrible crime to him.
With her husband now a prime suspect, Melissa is desperate to prove his innocence. A month after the murder, she visits two psychic sisters in search of answers. Hosts of a regular psychic tea party, Suzanne and Vincent claim to be guided by the spirits of the dead.
My psychic insights come to me in a variety of different ways. I start seeing flashes of light. I start seeing scenery and images.
I might hear or taste something that would all be symbolic to what is this person all about, or what is the situation all about.
And I also have a spirit guide who accompanies me during a psychic session. I see a picture of him that kind of emerges, kind of like a negative, and he gives me these images and these visions of the people that I'm trying to communicate with on the other side.
Melissa tells the psychic pair nothing about the murder.
And the first thing my spirit guide said to me was there was a grief cloud all around this lady. I just said, oh my goodness, your boys found a body? And she had said, yes, they did. The energy around her was saying that someone might even suspect her husband of doing this gruesome crime of killing this neighbor.
I was just simply amazed on what they could see that was going on with our family.
The psychics have seen the murder of John Yelenic, but can they find his killer?
Melissa just kind of casually said, well, who do you think killed my neighbor? And all of a sudden, immediately, the spirit guides just screamed out, law enforcement.
When 39-year-old dentist John Yelenic is murdered, his neighbors become suspects. Desperate, they turn to a pair of clairvoyant sisters who say the real killer works in law enforcement.
I called Suzanne and Jean and asked them if they would be interested in coming to Blairsville to do a reading over in John's house.
They agree. 3 months after the killing, they visit the crime scene.
As I was going to the backyard, I was feeling a very strong pull that the person who had done this to John had parked in the back.
I had a vision of a maroonish, reddish SUV stalking John Yelenic's house.
Hoping that the psychics can help to solve his murder, John's family has given the group permission to enter the house. No longer a restricted crime scene, inside little has changed since the murder. Blood, though faded, is still visible.
I was immediately pulled to the dining room, and I looked right down, and I said, whatever happened, happened right here. The energy was very heavy and thick. I was seeing stab wounds. I had seen his neck like jagged and then a straight line. I also felt a lot of blood pooling and pooling around my feet.
Then, Jean claims to see the killer.
John's spirit had drawn me to a shoe print, and as I put my hand over it, I started seeing a person with red hair, someone with light eyes, fair complexion, freckles, and had a flash of a badge.
And all of a sudden, these spirit guides just screamed out, law enforcement.
John's saying, he killed me.
Melissa is stunned.
I knew in my heart who I thought had committed this crime and how much it resembled that person. And the details were just overwhelming.
That person is Kevin Foley. He's been dating John Yelenic's ex-wife for 2 years. He has red hair and drives an SUV. And he's a state trooper.
He was already the person of interest because he was the boyfriend of John Yelenic's ex-wife. But the fact that he was a trooper made it difficult to believe that even somebody would do that. But it also made me think that he wouldn't have messed up and he wouldn't have left footprints. But once I got the psychic's information, you know, we wanted to look into it a little bit more.
Police discover that there had been bad blood between John Yelenic and Kevin Foley.
John Yelenic had frequent arguments with his ex-wife, Michelle. So John Yelenic and Kevin would have words, even to the point where the police were called.
The trouble is, Foley is a fellow officer, and they have to tread carefully. And their hands are tied while they await results of the blood and the DNA evidence.
That was taking the longest. It was like excruciating for not only the public, but for us.
In the meantime, analysis of the bloody shoe print has eliminated one suspect. Tom Hughes wears a shoe a full 3 sizes larger than the killer's.
It was a relief to know that Tom was cleared of being a suspect at that point.
Her family name cleared, Melissa wants police to meet with the psychics.
I was very skeptical of psychics, but I said I would go. I said I would, go down to the house and keep in the back of my mind that maybe it would work, maybe it would help.
4 months after the death of John Yelenic, the Vincent sisters meet the Blairsville police at the murdered dentist's home.
They gave me information about a reddish-colored SUV. I was taken aback. Kevin Foley drives a maroon-colored SUV-type vehicle.
As we were walking through the kitchen, John's spirit yelled out and said, "Pay close attention to the footprints." It appeared to me that it was an expensive running shoe, and also I could tell the size. It was like maybe a size 10.
There's no way they could have known that. Even if they got a tape measure, there's no way they could have known it because it was faded by then.
The psychics offer a prediction. The killer did leave evidence at the crime scene. Evidence they believe will be his downfall.
John Yelenic has DNA of the killer underneath his fingernails, and we told the police, you need to pursue this.
Would the long-awaited DNA results be the key to the case? Then, a final perplexing revelation.
Over the footprint, I had a flash of dog tags. Whoever had these dog tags helped kill John Yelenic. This person has a military background.
The psychics have given the police more to look into. But will their clues lead the police to the evidence they need to arrest one of their own?
On the Kaylee Marie Anthony case, an intermediary came to us and asked us to work with Dominic Casey, and we helped give information to the remains of where Kaylee Marie Anthony was at. And then after that, we profiled about 40 people for Dominic Casey. And to me, it all went back to one person. That was the mother. But their side of the camp still believes that she's innocent.
Their side of the camp being her mother and father?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But she's definitely the lead suspect, and was what we picked up. That's, she did it.
So you think she did it? It seems as though in the trunk of the car and all kind of other evidence is pointing in that direction, but they still have not come to that conclusion at this point.
Well, we gave her information in August and September of last year, a year ago. And the criminal case starts in February, but they'll be able to piece it together.
Was it an accident, or did she purposely?
I think it was an accident. I think she wanted to go out that night. I think she just wanted to quiet her, and one thing led to another. And then I think she suffocated her with a pillow and realized what she had done, and then tried to cover it up. But I do think someone else has knowledge to what happened to Kaylee.